Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
A very good morning, a good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners wherever you are in the world today. We have a very wonderful guest, Donalea Patman from Australia. She's a director. No, sorry. I'll just put Donalea Patman. That's it. Today, we have a very wonderful soul with us, Donalea Patman, and we are going to uncover with all the work that she does for the voiceless souls today. Donalea, very good. We're very happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's very kind of you, Anil. Thank you very much, and it's really lovely to be speaking with you today.
Perfect. Now, without further ado, let's get into our first question. You began in corporate communications at 24 as a director. What shifted internally that made wildlife, not corporate success, your life calling?
It's a very good question. I suppose I've always been, I always knew that I was here to do something significant. I always, even as a little girl, and thought that my parents couldn't really give me what I was here to be. So I suppose when I was old enough, I started a bit of a spiritual quest and did a lot of personal development. I started a business at 24, a corporate design business, which I ran for a very long time. And my corporate career in Perth was very successful. And part of the work that I was doing in the personal development space and the spiritual space, I came across an amazing man called Andrew Harvey, who has come up with the term sacred activism. So and his perspective is that it's not enough to be centered on the self and our own, obviously clearing our shadow and working on our own psyches to be better human beings on this beautiful planet we call home. His piece around sacred activism is that it's your duty to do something with that knowledge and wisdom that you access as you become more and more in tune with the earth and with spirit. And it was at a workshop at the White Lion Trust in South Africa, where he was running this sacred activism workshop, that I had this extraordinary experience. And if we could just take a few minutes for me to share that with you.
Please.
Because it was pivotal in how I moved into this space. So on our very first morning, we get woken up really early. It's before dawn, and we have our headlamps on and cups of tea, and we get into the vehicles. And we go out to see the Royal Pride, which is these extraordinary white lions. And I've never seen lions in the wild. I don't think I've even seen them in a zoo. So off we went and came around this corner as it's just breaking light to come across this pride of lions. And they sat bolt upright as the vehicle approached them. And we were instructed not to make any sound, just to be in stillness with them. Well, one of the instructions was also not to lock eyes with the lions, but I couldn't help myself. One of the lions locked gaze with me, and I was struck through. I couldn't move. I was sobbing, but quietly sobbing. But I was in some sort of interaction with this magnificent animal, and I was so extraordinarily in awe of nature creating such magnificence. I've never seen an animal like this. It really blew me apart. And when we got back to the camp and we'd had breakfast and we're doing our workshop-y type things, I started hearing about this industry of canned hunting and how canned hunting is driving lions to extinction. It's one of the drivers of extinction. And I couldn't believe that people were stealing some of these cubs out of the wild to invigorate their genetics to breed these lions solely for them to be shot in an enclosure. I was so outraged. Anil, I was beside myself. And I knew in that moment that if one of these hunters had stood before me, I had it in me to kill. That's a shocking revelation. Like, that's a shocking thing as a human being, to think that you have the capacity to be that enraged that you could actually do harm. And I was so shocked by that. And so Andrew Harvey took me through this process, and basically towards the end of that, he made a statement to me that changed my life. He said, now that you've been brought to your knees in your indignant rage and in your despair, I want you to go out into the world and do something about it. You can't come back from that. You have to take action. This happened in 2011, I think. And then, of course, 2012 was the December 2012 was the big gateway opening. But that piece was just extraordinary. And I came back to Australia and started contacting conservation groups to tell them about this industry and how Australians also were complicit, because young Australians are sold a conservation concept. Come over, bottle feed lion cubs, and you're helping conservation. And they're actually part of the breeding cycle and part of the cycle of enabling lion cubs to be hand raised, to be part of the bloodlust and part of that systemic cruelty, which most Australians would be mortified, because we're animal lovers, mortified that they'd been fraudulently sold a volunteer package to be part of this blood lion piece. So nobody wanted to talk to me. None of the conservation groups were interested. Nobody really believed that it was a real thing. And I went back to the White Lion Trust in 2012, and that's where I met Pippa Hankinson, who created the movie Blood Lions. This is before she did the movie, and both of us said we needed to do more. I came back to Australia, and it was leading to a federal election, and I started writing to the candidates that were running for the election, and one of the candidates phoned me and said, if what you're telling me is true, if I am successful and I'm elected, we'll do something about this. Well, he was elected. I gave him a few months to settle in. And then once I met with him, then the work just had a life of its own. It just was just extraordinary. And I always hold the position that I work for that particular lioness in South Africa. She's the CEO. She sets up the meetings. I'm just the human face that rocks up. And there will be times I'd be in meetings and I would just be so in over my head with ministers or with politicians. But I just knew I had to keep showing up, and that the work was being done on a bigger scale. It was bigger than me. And somehow within 18 months, Australia was the first country in the world to ban the importation of lion trophies and body parts as a direct response to the cruel and barbaric industry of canned hunting.
That's such a beautiful story. I'm sure, people who have been doing this inhumane thing, if they listen to it, and the whole point of this podcast is to amplify the misery that poor souls have been put through by us humans, to be honest.
Mm.
And this is so touching, because for me, but because of the exposure that I've had, I know, there is a lot of things that go beyond what we humans know about. And it is people like you who bring these voices out. And it needs to be heard by a lot of people, not in just Australia, but even in India and across the globe. They all need to hear this. Thank you so much for all you do. Now, what did you see inside the hunting industry that the public still doesn't fully understand?
Oof. That's a big question too. I think the level of power, money, influence is extraordinary. And even Australians have no idea of how that industry infiltrates things that are decided on and happen here. It's just quite mind-blowing. So as an example, and I can only share this as a sharing from colleagues in South Africa, is I believe that they fund universities, and they fund universities so that the message in the universities is that hunting is good for conservation. It's like, the money that's invested, if you like. But what I know about canned hunting and the hunting industry is that it's private individuals, it's businesses. There's very little that goes to local communities. There's very little that enriches the country as a whole. And in Australia, we know that there are expos that are held here that are attended by some Australian political groups. We've got a group in Australia called the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. We know that the NRA, we know that Dallas Safari Club International, we know that Safari Club, all these big hunting groups attend these expos and promote hunting and selling, wanting the gun laws here to be overturned or weakened. So, it's a global piece. And I can just share a story that once the ban happened in 2015, it wasn't long after that the, other politicians decided to table a disallowance motion, wanting to overturn what the minister had done. And that was backed by the Shooters, Farmers and Fishers Party and also other politicians. There was also a parliamentary Friends of Shooters created in Parliament to overturn what we had done. So it had been seen as a wedge in the hunting industry. And so that piece, I was also tabled in the New South Wales Upper House as being unconscionable by a member. And that Hansard was sent globally around the world, including the South African government, including all the hunting groups. So there was a time that I was really afraid because I knew what they were onto and what they were up to. So our website got hacked, our Facebook page got hacked, a whole range of things I had to deal with. But that's how the powers of that industry is. It's a murky, dirty world. So there's lots to be cautious about in that space. And again, money, power, etc. There's also a story about a hunter in the US wanting to shoot a rhino in Africa. And importing a rhino head wouldn't have been allowed because you're not allowed to trade internationally in rhino horn. He was offered the same amount of money, $350,000, to not shoot that rhino. But no, he and along with the hunting groups tabled, did whatever they needed to do in the US to be able to import that trophy. So that's one of the things you hear. I haven't done any research into that to be able to say that, but I could certainly direct you to people that could qualify that statement. And yes, there's all sorts of shenanigans that happens.
I tell you. Now, sorry, I missed something. For our listeners and everybody, can you just tell us what this canned hunting is all about?
So canned hunting is the deliberate breeding of animals, and in South Africa, it's specifically around predators. It's lions, tigers, it's ligers, it's leopards, it's all of the big cats. And they're bred, they're hand-reared, so they're not afraid of humans. And when they are then sold online. And the reason they're attractive to hunters is that they're really pretty. They're not wild animals, so they're not scarred up. They're not had a wild life. So, they're very beautiful heads. Those animals are then transferred to a larger location, but still, it's not huge by any means, and it's fenced. And that animal, because it's used to being in captivity, and it's been relocated, and it'll be drugged to be relocated. When it wakes up, it then naturally goes to a fence line to navigate its territory. The people who pay for the hunt, and it's called fly in, fly out because it's very efficient. You don't have to spend a week in the wild tracking a wild animal. They fly in, they stay at a resort, and then they're driven back and forward to make them feel like they've been travelling a long distance to get to this animal. When the animal hears the vehicle, they're used to being fed from vehicles, so they approach the vehicle. And then the hunter has his opportunity to shoot this animal, and they're directed to shoot it either through the shoulder blade or through the chest, because what they want is a clean shot to preserve the head. And so a lot of these hunters are also unskilled. And then they shoot this animal, usually not with the first shot. It's usually the professional hunters that are with them that will follow through with the shooting. And again, you can watch the documentary Blood Lions to see some of the, some of that. It's a very good documentary, and doesn't have a lot of heart-wrenching scenes, but there are a few scenes in that will just show you the depth of the tragedy. And so then they go back with their story about how they spent a week in the bush and they tracked down this wild lion, and it's all just a setup. And so these animals are then prepared to be shipped back to the US or whatever country the hunter has come from. The bones, though, are kept by the company that they've bought the lion from, because the bones are then used to sell to other markets, which are usually worth around $5,000 for a carcass. So they're making money not just on the hunt, they're making money on the taxidermy, they're making money on the bones, they're making money on a whole range of things. And the other part of it, so these lion farms or these predator farms that they have in South Africa are set up as tourist destinations. So if you arrive in South Africa and you want to see wild lions and you don't have time to go to Kruger and to wait until you might just magically see a wild animal, you can go to these places, you can play with the cubs, you can pet them, you can bottle feed them, you can see the bigger lions in the bigger enclosures. So you see all these animals living under incredible stress. They're also bred incessantly. So the females it's like a puppy mill. It's horrendous. It's horrific. And some of the footage that I've gathered just by visiting one of these farms is just, the condition of these places is horrendous. And now, because of the laws changing internationally, because after we got the ban in Australia, it was followed by France and the Netherlands, and the US then implemented really strict laws about importing lion trophies. So we had an impact around the world. And with that, the industry's changed, and now they're crossbreeding tigers and lions to make ligers, so they can find a loophole. But yeah, it's a horrendous, brutal industry, and it needs to close down.
I'm totally speechless, because for me, it is an eye-opener, to be honest. Because these are things which a lot of us, we don't even get to hear. I am really speechless. Now, you work directly with the Australian federal government, which you've been discussing. How does effective advocacy actually look like behind closed doors?
Well, some people will tell you I'm a tenacious pest. I think it requires stamina. It requires being available 24/7, because when a politician is going to go and have a radio interview and they want notes to be able to go into that interview with the facts, is that they'll call you at any time of the day or night to know that they've got your knowledge to be able to speak clearly about the issue. It requires a MP who also feels passionate about the cause that you're driving. If you can't find somebody to align, then it's very difficult to get anything through government. So I was lucky that my local candidate was passionate about this. He was appalled by it and wanted to do something. And so Jason Wood was my local MP. He worked with the then Minister Greg Hunt, and that is how that piece got through. And I was speaking to the speed in which that got through. The other part of it, I think, is the fact that I was naive to the processes. So I didn't know that it takes around 20 years to get legislation changed in Australia. I didn't know that it takes something between around between 11 and 24 years to have an animal listed on the IUCN Red List. So when somebody realises that a species has been traded or is looking like it's becoming extinct, by the time all of those processes come into play, that animal is well and truly gone. So I think that's the other part of the spirituality lining up with action and being able to drive it from that perspective where the forces greater than myself were helping, because there was just a level of grace that came with this work and this particular piece of work.
The Lion Trophy import ban was a global first. What did it take strategically and emotionally to get across the line?
It took a lot. It took a lot for me to be able to step out of a very successful career and put all of that financial put that financial security aside to take a leap of faith. So it took a lot of courage, because I decided that if I was going to get real about this work, that I needed to step out of my corporate work and I needed to put everything into this. It also took a real level of trust, because I made the commitment to believe and to trust in my intuition, but I also knew that I was being guided by a force greater than myself. And when I say that this lioness is the CEO, is that I deeply listened to the wisdom and to the direction of the field of intelligence of wildlife, of this particular lioness. It wasn't me that was directing it. It was a force outside of myself. And I at least had enough training and workshopping, I suppose, to go, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I have to say yes to this. And that takes a lot because you know that you could easily, you've got to drop your whole thing about looking like an idiot and a fool. Because I was in these meetings, I still was learning about canned hunting and still not really understanding the depth of the industry. I was learning on the run, and I had to create a charity because to have a professional platform, and then that charity needed to be registered and all of the corporate overlays that come with that. But when I first started, and again I come back to, I was so naive that I just thought, of course I can get this done. Of course this is what I'm passionate about. The government needs to do something about this. And then I find, so now when I'm doing the work that I'm doing is that, now we need scientific evidence and so it's all getting very bogged down in all of the things that I wasn't aware of then, and just knew that once I had this relationship with this federal MP and we were both on the same channel, that we could develop this program, and it was just an incredible thing.
You mentioned that you gave up the corporate career, and that I can relate to very well, because I took the leap of faith way back in 2006, when we moved, me and my mother moved back from Singapore, because when my father passed away in 2004, and my mother was like, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to go back to India, and because this is where our roots are. And I had to shut down all my 3 companies and, the corporate career that I had, the business and everything. And it was just a leap of faith, I would say. I think it's been almost 20 years now, close to. And I'm still surviving, to be honest. Sometimes, and as I said, it's been, I've always been, this has always been there in terms of being kind to, animals. When I moved back to India, I was taking care of 17 cats in Mumbai, because that's where originally I am from. And then we moved to Pune. We had to, in 2013. And Here, when we moved, I was feeding, the pigeons. And then, I don't know. It has always been a natural thing because of the path of spirituality that I've been on. Is I've never harmed, as far as I know, right from my childhood and what I remember, I've never harmed any creature in any way. Yeah, unknowingly, if I would have killed ants that we walk in and all that, that's a different, I know that is also a karma if you believe in that. But deliberately going and harming any creature, that I think has always been the way of life, being not to harm. And that has resonated from the spiritual masters, the master that we have been following. And I think it is been a natural calling for me, because I believe it wouldn't have happened until we had, during COVID, me and my wife, we were just, talking about it. Let's get a dog home and all that. And it just happened. It's like, at my wife's place, they've always had dogs. For me, because we haven't, because there is a part of spirituality where it says, when you bring an animal home, you get attached. That's very, very true. We humans, we get attached to everything. And that makes, in a way, that makes a path, not path difficult, but it makes it a bit difficult when it comes to when you're close to leaving this, human form or human body. So your soul is so attached that, it becomes difficult at that time for you. Because the whole part of spirituality is to detach yourself, not be attached to anything. You do your part, but don't be attached to anything, because that will take your soul. When it comes to the end, your soul has to go, no matter what. This physical form, these are all vessels that we keep changing all the time. So anyways, and we had the first one come home, and then I think May, June, July. Yeah. After 2 months, we had to rescue one of the babies, so we brought her home, and then then it just happened. And then on 2024 Christmas Eve, we had one more rescued, which I used to take care at my mother's building complex, and then just on January 7th. Another one had to be taken home because she was brutally beaten by the residents of the society. And since I am the one, they think he's there, he'll take care of everything. But they don't realize it's quite taxing for not only for us, but for the animal, the pain that they feel. Imagine, as humans, even if we have to get one stitch done, it's so hard. And imagine this poor soul had to go through 15 stitches.
Oh.
And and just that, now, I'll be honest, it has become so difficult right now for me and my wife. We are like, just yesterday only evening, we were debating now, should I take her back or we leave her home? We let her be with us. Because the thing is, she's got so used to, being on those beds, sleeping comfortably, the security. You won't believe it. If I tell you this, you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
This little one is so comfortable. She doesn't care. If nobody is coming, she would just go into one of the bedrooms, hop onto the bed. It's like a double bed. She'll hop onto the bed and sleep without any issues the entire night. Whether me and my wife, anybody goes and sleeps with her or not, she's not bothered. She will just go on the bed and sleep. And me and my wife, we just laugh about it, It's like she's so comfortable being in that home. One reason is because she's seen me right from the day one she was born, because I was taking care of them. And now since she's grown up, I mean, even at my mother's compound, right now, I would say she's just about 1.5 year old, but she's got so used to now to my wife even that, and her sister and the other two we have, they are all so comfortable. But at times it becomes difficult for us to take care of all of them, because at times they have this. Disagreements that they have when they are playing.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful, but just because we let them, roam around the house wherever they want to do, whatever they want to do, no restrictions and everything. But yes, that has been what we've been doing anyways.
Well, thank you for giving her safety. I think she's probably been able to sleep properly for the first time in her life being in your home.
It's, as I said, even before the start, it is not me. I am just being a medium to do these things. I mean, we humans have to understand we don't have the power and the capacity to do things. It is when the nature, let's be honest, because we all know we've been in the corporate world where it has been like, oh, I'm doing this, I want the reward, I want to have the trophy for this and all that. So we've all been so used to that it's me and glorifying ourselves, that at times God makes you humble and realize it. He puts you in places and situations where you realize, oh, this is not what it should have been, because life given to us in human form is for much bigger purpose, if we can realize that.
Well, I believe that too. I think that we're here as stewards and guardians of this beautiful planet we call home.
Absolutely.
It's our role. We're not here to just extract and exploit and make profit from. We're here, obviously, all of that's available to us, and it's, what's our legacy going to be? Like, what are the footprints we want to leave in the sand? And I think that's, this corporate capitalist culture rewards the extractive, unfortunately. But I do hope we're in a time where this is transitioning and people are waking up to the fact that this is a living being we live on.
Absolutely.
And these are her, and as you started the conversation, is that we are all have a right to live and thrive on this planet, and it's our role, as us with the opposable thumbs, to create that harmony, to make sure that all beings are safe and that they also have the space and the capacity to do what they're here to do. I can tell you an extraordinary story about elephants and why they're on the planet. But that's a whole other conversation.
We'll do that as well soon, I'm sure about that. Now, many campaigns stall in consultation. How do we distinguish genuine policy progress with political delay tactics?
I think the political piece is so glacially slow that it's not where our energies should be focused. I think I had a moment in time, a window was open, and I found a crack in the crevice, like in a crack in the system, and managed to be guided through to create a big piece. Another piece of work I've done in Australia is identify the rampant trade in the domestic trade in ivory and rhino horn. And nobody wants to talk about that. And we worked with the government. We had a parliamentary inquiry, which would cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And the result of that is the government committed to closing the domestic trade in ivory and rhino horn at the 2019 CITES COP in Geneva. Nothing has been done since then. So the federal government made the announcement, but the states and territories have not ever been given a brief that you need to implement the law. So we've got this disconnect in Australia with a federal system and a state and territory system, and the two usually push each other and fight, and things just don't get done. So that piece of legislation is sitting there, and government has continually kicked it down the road, and that's a great example. COVID was an excuse. coming out of COVID, and now it's like, well, that was done then, and now we're further along, and it's just been forgotten. So Australia needs to claim that, that we're not part of the global community in addressing the poaching crisis, because we're allowing a domestic trade to continue. And the traders have all gone back to business as usual, because all of the hype that was created from our campaign had people knowing that it was imminent that the trade was going to be stopped in Australia. We had auction houses telling customers that they would write them a receipt to say it was camel bone, so they could take ivory from Australia to China, Vietnam, Cambodia. It's just shocking, the behaviour. So, but then there's no prosecution, nobody goes to jail, nobody gets fined, and so everybody continues bad practices.
You know what you rightly mentioned, it's not only in Australia. I think it's, from what I know, even in India, we have a disconnect between the states and the governments when it comes to even implementing, a simple thing as the policies. We have policies in place for animal birth control, for everything, even for the stray communities. But the problem is nobody wants to implement. And apart from that, sorry for being brutally honest, but there's a lot of corruption even that goes on. And as you said, we were discussing previously that especially when the financial economics are greater, then these poor souls don't get, and the worst part is currently we all have been claiming, because these poor souls don't have the right to vote. They don't, they don't care about them. That is what it is. So I think it is across the globe, somewhere or the other, there is some, we all have these issues that come up. Now, moving further along, hosting Australia's first ivory and rhino horn destruction event was symbolic and strategic. Why are public acts like this so powerful?
They're powerful because you are publicly displaying what people feel has been addressed. If you ask any Australian, and we did this with our part of our campaign, if you interview them and ask them, do you know that there's the legal trade in rhino horn and ivory in Australia is still allowed? They just go, oh, for God's sake, no, that was dealt with years ago. And so there's an assumption that it's all taken care of. And because, Australia is a great country and we live good lives, people don't deep dive into any of the issues. So if they see ivory for sale in a bric-a-brac shop or an antique store, they don't question, oh, is this recent ivory or is it old ivory? Is this been recently poached? It's just like, well, if it's in the country, it must be legal. So hosting an event like that, it just brings it to the fore. And again, I was working with Jason Wood, who was the MP in my electorate. So we had finished the ban on lion trophies, and then I went to him with finding ivory for sale in Australia. And having that public event, the biggest part of it that was really helpful for Jason is it attracted a lot of media, Australian media, international press, and politicians need the public on side to get legislation changed. So that's what was really successful about that campaign, is having that. And also during that time, we asked people to bring their ivory to be destroyed, because a lot of people inherit it. They're gifted it at a wedding. They have it and they don't really want to keep it, but they don't know what to do with it. So having a destruction event was a really great way for people that had ivory to be able to say the only value ivory has is on a living elephant.
That's true. That's so true.